So what you doing up on a night like this?
You should be swinging in your hammock during the dog watches. It ain't good to be up during this time of night. Don't worry, I can remember what it was like back when I was a greenhorn. That was a hard life. I was up on a whale up the far north, where the summertime is just one long winter's day. We used to sit around the tripods while the old salts spun their dits. Charlie, he was the oldest of the old salts on that whaler. He was a lime-juice sailor from the east coast of England. 40 years of salt spray had transformed his skin to wrinkled leather, and his love of chewing tobacco had turned his teeth brown as chestnuts. It must have done him good, because he still had 'em all, which is more than you can say for some of the lads coming through now. I was a young sailor, eager to learn, but what he taught was the art of cursing. He could reel out a string of oaths that would make respectable ladies curl up and die. Not that he knew any. He was always swearing, but only when the weather was fair. When there was a storm brewing, it changed to, "Oh God, oh Lord, oh God." We called him the praying barometer, and he was a better one than the one in the skipper's cabin. So when someone noticed Charlie had stopped swearing, word would flash round the ship. Look smart for a bit of weather. Charlie's a friend of God again. When Charlie started praying, everybody else started to curse. It was different when Charlie started to swear again. The call would go out, "Charlie's united with the devil again. Clear skies and a fair wind. All hands set the top gallant sails." I remember one day, we were stoking up tripods. What's a tripod? Well, there are these great cauldrons that they set up on deck to render down the whales once they were caught. Nobody wants to eat whale meat, but once you render them down, there's plenty of gentlemen willing to pay a pretty penny for the oil. They'd bubble and froth and melt into the oil we came for. Any day we weren't hunting, that's what we did. We rendered down those great beasts into oil for lamps in fancy gentlemen's houses. The pots would turn the air black with their smoke. Then Charlie would turn it blue with his cursing. I was cutting up the blubber into chunks small enough to throw in the tripods, and it never seemed to end. As soon as I got to the end of one piece, another slab would slam down in front of me and splatter me with whale blood. That's how us spent our days, cutting up whale meat and listening to Charlie or Jack as they spun their discs. Jack was one of our old harpooners. He wore an old blue jacket. It stained black with whale blood. He'd been to sea from a boy. He was tall, but his shoulders and chest were so wide, he looked about middle height when he wasn't standing next to anybody. He kept his black tarpaulin tipped flat aback and let his hair curl down until it was level with a pair of eyes the colour of ice blue sky. He had just started on his next tail when suddenly a call came down from the masthead lookout. "There she blows!" I threw the last few chunks of blubber into that stinking cauldron and ran for the boats. Great jets of white steam lanced up into the clear blue sky as the priests broke through the surface to breathe. Moments later, we were pulling towards them. For all we were worth, every man knew that the sooner we got all our barrels filled, the sooner we went back home. Jack was in the bow, with his harpoons down beside him. I was on an oar, Charlie was manning the tiller and cursing us with every stroke. We pulled until the whales were broaching all around us and their great black bodies slid out of the depths just long enough to blow a whoosh of moist breath before sliding back under the waves. Jack stood up, harpoon in hand. His razor-sharp barbs shone in that eternal twilight. He was watching the waters lift beside us. Great bull whale broke the surface. He hurled its harpoon. It arced through the air and then plunged down and sank deep into the beast's flesh. You could see it flinch as the metal sting, and with a flip of his tail, it powered away from the source of the pain. The harpoon line whipped out, and we grabbed hold of anything we could, till as the last of it shot away and the boat jerked into motion. Twin plumes of spray rose from our bows. Faster and faster we scudded across the ocean. Charlie leaned on the tiller for all his weight to stop us being capsized. The beast made his mad dash for safety. No, a harpoon don't kill a whale. There is a man alive with the strength to throw a harpoon through all that blubber and meat down to the beast's heart. The harpoon is there to catch it, but once he caught it, then he had to hang on and let it run until it was tired itself out. Then, once it's exhausted and just floating there, only then can you sneak up and deliver the killing blow. But this one didn't even slow down. We were dragged for miles and miles until we could just see our ship was just a black smudge of smoke staining the horizon. We sped past great white bergs. We could hear our fingers of ice clawing against our hull packs. There were times I didn't know who was more likely to capsize us, that whale or Charlie, as he tried to pick a path through that icy blue labyrinth. The whale must have realised he ain't gonna shake us off. It broached for one last time. A great cloud of white steam erupted from its blowhole. Then it pushed its head down, its tail broke the surface in one final gesture of defiance, and it headed straight for the bottom, determined to take us down with it. We could hear the boat creaking as the whale fought against it. We were moments from being dragged down when the harpoon line snapped. I have never been more grateful for a quartermaster's penny pinching. After that Nantucket sleigh-ride, the sea seemed unnaturally still. The only movement were a few ripples racing away from us that marked the spot where the beast had headed back down into the cold darkness. I have never felt so alone. There were no birds, there were no waves. The only sound was the groaning and creaking of the ice that surrounded us. The gentle splashes from our oars as they dipped into the water. We tried to find a way out through the ever-shifting labyrinth of ice, but we could have been rowing around in circles for hours. That far north, a compass is next to useless. That's when we saw the bird. It was the only living creature that we'd seen since the whale left us. We figured it had to be certainly something, so we followed it. We followed it until it came to perch on the rigging of a ship that was half buried in the ice. Its sails looked like no more than tattered ribbons that had been swinging from the yard arms, but the great black hull looked solid and a damn sight safer than our little boat. But we didn't know then what it contained. Jack, he took his spare harpoon and he lobbed it over the ship's rail. It stuck solid in the deck boards, and then, one by one, we climbed up and had a look around. We knew instantly what kind of ship it was. The decks were slick with ice, but that ice had been dyed black with ancient blood. A black trail led to the middle of the deck, and there were the tripods, now cold and dead, their fire having gone out long a time ago. We headed towards the forecastle. On any other ship, it would be warm and the fog coming out from the men sleeping as they tried to get a few hours sleep when they're off watch.
Shivered.
But not from the cold. The forecastle was deserted as the rest of the ship. There wasn't even anything to show that anybody had ever lived there, not even a sea chest or a dingy box. The only things that remained to show that it had ever been occupied were a pair of ice-crusted hammocks swinging with the motion of the ship. Then I heard the deck boards creaking behind me. I spun round, and there was a shadowy figure filling the doorway. I couldn't help step back as it stepped forward and spoke. Galley's empty too. They must have taken everything before they left. I let out a breath I didn't even know I'd been holding as Jack continued. But the holds are full. They must have been on their way back when it happened. We salvaged this lot, and we will be rich. Do you know what happened, I asked. No idea, said Jack, but I saw Charlie heading towards the skipper's cabin. You best go ask him. The sun stung my eyes as I left the gloom of the forecastle and headed aft, with my boots sliding across the frozen deck with every step. The skipper's cabin was where it always is, aft of the wheel and taking up the whole stern of the ship. I stopped at the door. Sailor doesn't invade the skipper's cabin without asking permission. So I knocked. I cursed myself. There wasn't going to be anybody inside there. This was going to be as empty as the rest of the ship. Pushed open the door and found that I was wrong. Charlie was there, standing in the middle of the cabin, muttering Hail Marys. And he wasn't alone. There was another man, slumped over the chart table. Or what remained of him. He still had a pen in his hand and his logbook open in front of him. The whole ship was cold, but this cabin seemed colder still. I could feel my heart thumping as I forced my feet to move. The deck boards creaked with every step as I crept forward until I could read the last page in his logbook. On the top was printed the ship's name, Octavius, and the date, November the 11th, 1762. We have been enclosed in ice for 17 days. The damn crew left us a week ago today. She died this morning. Just getting cold. We must rest. She? Who was she? The ship? No. Turning around, I followed the skipper's long dead gaze and found the form of a woman huddled up in front of a stove that was as cold as she was. The Bible that she had been reading was placed on the ground beside her, and she had her arms round Boy, her son perhaps. As if even in death she could not let him go. A small toy bird slid from the boy's hands and clattered to the floor. Breaking the spell, I grabbed Charlie by the arm and shook him. Let's get out of here. We hurried back towards the safety of the forecastle, and the rest of the crew was already there, still bailing to get one of the lamps lit. We need to leave, I told them, but I didn't even turn round. I'm not running away from a fortune just because some lad got spooked. He said, now make yourself useful, then go find something to put in that stove. I pushed Charlie forward. Go on, Charlie. Tell him what we saw. We can't leave until we give him a good Christian burial. I thought he was going to curse Jack or, curse me. We all expected him to curse somebody. When he didn't, everybody dropped what they were doing and ran for the boat. The sky was still pure eggshell blue. But we'd all been to sea long enough to know how fast that could change. A couple of lads slithered down the line into the boat and were sorting out the oars when we suddenly had a rumbling coming from above us. Ice rained down and a great block of it thudded onto the deck. We just ran for the safety of the forecastle as a block the size of a tombstone bounced off the yards and smashed through the boat, cleaving it straight in half. By the time we thought it was safe to come out again, all the remainder of our boat was the shattered stump of its bows hanging from that harpoon liner. The lads who got into it had been completely vanished. We stood and stared at the patch of water where the boat had been, and I heard Charlie muttering, "We need to lay them to rest." But Jap was all business. "We need a fire. You? Go find some dry wood, break up the skipper's furniture if you must, and use it to fill that stove. That will keep us warm while we wait for our ship to come up and see the smoke." I wasn't going anywhere near the skipper's cabin, if I could help it, but I found some old stools in the galley and that I was able to break up. When I got back, they were still struggling with their matches. Most were too soaked to light. Those few that could strike couldn't keep their flame long enough to light the bundle of kindling that they produced. Jack reached into the pocket of his jacket and pulled out a small object wrapped in oilskin. There was a silver case inside it. He opened the lid and showed the single solitary match that it contained. "Get that right close," he said to Charlie. "And you close that door. I don't want any drafts." I closed the door, plunging us into darkness. The match flared, illuminating the two men in its flickering light. He touched to the edge of a rag, the flame expanded. bathing them in a warm glow. They eased it down to the pile of kindling that they had set in the stove, which started to smoulder. Then, suddenly, there was nothing but darkness. "Were there any more in the galley?" Charlie's voice came out of the darkness. "No," Jack replied. "Were there any more in the skipper's cabin?" Silence returned. It dragged on, with nothing but the muffled sound of the ice groaning outside. After what seemed like a very long time, Charlie spoke. "We shouldn't disturb those people. They deserve a good Christian burial." "Then who's gonna bury us, old man?" Jack spat back. Even in the darkness, I could feel Jack's gaze shifted to me. "Lad, you go aft and you find me something to light this stove with. I don't care if you have to tear the place apart to get it. But you don't come back here until you've got something." I didn't want to go back there, but I couldn't say that. Not when he was feeling like that. I crept aft and knocked on the skipper's door. Then I let myself in. The skipper and his family were still there, frozen in the moment that they died. I crept over to where the mother lay, huddled with her son next to the long-dead stove. There weren't any matches there. I could feel the skipper's long-dead eyes boring into the back of my skull as I rummaged through his sea chest. I hated doing it, but it needed to be done. Up there in the far north, fire can be as valuable as gold. It can be the difference between life and death itself. So where would the skipper have kept something so valuable? He'd have kept it somewhere nobody else would be able to steal it from him. Somewhere he always had it to hand. He'd have kept it on him, the way that Jack did. I crept towards him. I didn't want to touch him, but I had to. I reached out towards him, then I stopped. I coughed. "Sorry, sir, but we need to borrow your matches." Don't know why I said it. He was long past being able to hear. But I couldn't just take them from him either. I slipped my hand inside his jacket. It was cold as ice. I could feel the ancient fabric rubbing against my bare skin. My fingertips brushed something, perhaps an oilskin, that had grown stiff from years in that salt-laden atmosphere. I pulled out a small box. The oilskin cracked as I peeled it back, revealing a glint of silver. Quick shake proved there were still matches inside. I thanked him and then fled back to the forecastle. When I got there, Jack was dousing the contents of that stove with whale oil that he'd taken from the hold. "You find anything?" he asked as I entered. I passed him the bundle I'd taken from the skipper. He ripped off the oilskin and poured the matches into his own case. Then he tossed the skipper's little box back to me. He struck a match. It lit first time. Then he touched it to the oil-soaked wood in the stove. The wood started to smoke, then smoulder. Then late flames licked up, filling the room with dancing shadows. We huddled around it, that stove basking in its warmth. I'd been cold for so long, it had seeped into my bones, draining the life out of me. So the heat of that fire, it was glorious. The wood from the old stills that had broken up started to catch and pop and crack. If I closed my eyes, it was like I was in front of the hearth back at home. Smoke kept pouring out until we could barely make out the shapes of each other. It was like one of those pea supers you get in London. We stayed basking in that warmth for as long as we could. But in the end, the smoke forced us out from the safety of the forecastle, coughing and spluttering up on deck. After the warmth of that stove, it seemed even colder than it had before. It must have been getting late by then, or as late as it gets that far north. The sun had dipped to graze the horizon, turning everything the colour of blood. Charlie spoke first. We shouldn't have taken from those people. They need... I'm not taking orders from a dead man, Jack snapped back and then stomped aft. He hadn't got more than a few yards before a great block of ice crashed to the deck in front of him, shattered into razor-sharp shards in all directions. He froze. Then he turned back to Charlie. Fine, we'll do it your way. They sent me back to the forecastle to collect the hammocks. The smoke had cleared just enough so that I could see him, but when I got back up I was still spluttering as I dragged him back up on deck. Next came the part which none of us wanted to do, but we all knew it had to be done. For the third time that day, I knocked on the door of the skipper's cabin, and this time I didn't feel foolish. Charlie and I went to the skipper. I slipped his mattress case back into his coat pocket before lacing my arms around his chest. He felt heavy, like he was now reluctant to go for the rest that he'd asked for in his logbook. Between us, we managed to get him up onto deck and lay him onto one of those hammocks. Jack had gone to his wife. He threw her across his shoulder and carried her up on deck like a sack of potatoes, but he was gentler when he laid her out for a final rest. That just left the boy. He was small enough that I could carry him on my own. We placed him with his mother so that she could protect him the way that she had done for all those years while they slept in the ocean depths. We laid them by the rail and took off our hats. Charlie knew the words, and he spoke them better than any preacher that I've ever known. It was a bitterly cold, colder than I've ever felt before. A breath formed wisps of steam as they slid over the side. They slipped below the glassy surface without even leaving a ripple behind. As they disappeared, the sun lifted above the bergs that surround us, and its warmth washed over us. I can't tell you whether Charlie had been right or not, but I can tell you something had changed. The deckboards groaned as if a heavy weight had been lifted off them, and the tattered remains of the ice-covered sails shook in the breeze, showering us with frost, and for just a moment, it looked like the air was full of stars. Then I noticed the smoke billowing out the forecastle. It was thicker than before, and the sound of the fire was different too, more intense. As I got closer, I could feel it getting warmer. The red light was flickering around the edge of the door. As soon as I opened it, I could hear the fire devouring the ancient oil-soaked timbers. The heat melted the ice, revealing the blood and oil that had been the ship's life. Wisps of smoke crept up through the gaps in the deck. Then it caught light. A ribbon of flame ran over to the ancient tripod, and from there, the flames traced the paths that had been worn onto the decks by the oily boats of the ancient whalers' crew. It headed aft towards the wheel and sideways towards the rigging. It did not take much to get those tarred ropes burning. Fire leapt up the shrouds, turning them to blazing lines of light. Then, one by one, they snapped. The mast came crashing down. It slid off the deck and came to rest, floating in the calm waters just beside the ship. We knew that as soon as the fire hit the ship's cargo of oil, it would be gone. So we scrambled down onto the raft that had just provided us. There was just enough room for us to cling onto the cross trees. We watched as fire erupted from the hold, breaking the old ship from the bird's icy grasp and allowing it to start its final journey to follow its skipper down into the depths. Then it was gone. There wasn't even any flotsam to show where it had once been. We clung there for what seemed like an eternity, but in reality it couldn't be more than an hour or so. Then we heard splashing of oars, and a whaleboat slid into view. "Bloody hell! You took your damn time! How the devil did you find us?" Charlie called out. And they called back. They'd seen a bird, certainly.